All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 86 of the Hideout, where we will be talking about the metaverse, Web3 gaming, digital art, and all that surrounds it. We have an exciting panel today of different individuals who have been contributing to the space for a very, very long time, and they're awesome projects. So I'm really excited to dive in and get some introductions going. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Nick Frontera. I am one of the founders and the CEO of Apollo Entertainment, the company behind Satoshiverse and the Legion's 2029 game. I've been in the space since 2017. We've been building Satoshiverse since 2020. It started as a comic NFT collaboration with the infamous Jose Delbo, former Marvel and DC comic artist turned crypto artist, and then it has evolved into the blockchain themed gaming universe that we are building with our Legion's 2029 game. For those who have not heard of Legion's 2029, I posted a little post at the top. That's probably the best way to learn about it. At a very high level, it is a hybrid between a third-person hack and slash game with combat inspired by God of War. And the hybrid is that it has a roguelike game loop with a RPG progression system. So there's a lot of different genres mixed together to create a very fast-paced game experience. But like I said, all the details are in that post. We've got a ton of campaigns going on right now, leaderboard contests where you can win a ton of really cool prizes. Again, check out the post. We've also got a very limited time thing going with Hyperplay and Game 7, where you can actually earn Game 7 tokens, as well as a few NFT prizes by participating in Hyperplay's Play Street Quest. So a lot of information. We'll keep it short. We'll keep it there because I really want to get to our introductions of our amazing panelists who I have been, building in the space for a very long time. So I'm excited to have them on and hear all about what they're focused on these days. Why don't we start with Amanda? Great to have you on the spaces. I've definitely followed what you've done for a long time, so great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, excited to be here. I see our fellow monkey Adam as well. So, hey, Adam, good to see you up here. Yeah, just a little background on us. I'm the co-founder and chief operating officer of MetaGood. MetaGood is the company behind NFT collection On-Chain Monkey. We started the company back in 2021. So we've been a community focused around innovation, first on Ethereum and now Bitcoin for 3 years. And we created the first 10,000 NFT collection inscribed on Bitcoin. So piece of history there. And then we also launched Osura, Osura, which is our curated marketplace for digital art on Bitcoin. So we launched some of our own collections because we saw some limitations in the current ways of kind of viewing and displaying art on Bitcoin. So we launched our own marketplace, and then we've worked and collabed with a number of artists, including Patrick Amadon for his first collection on Bitcoin, Disobedience. And then we recently launched Alexi Andre, who was a top art blocks artist for his first collection on Bitcoin. It was a generative art collection, so long form, so a 10,000 collection that also incorporated traits of the on-chain monkey. So if you were a monkey holder, you could select your monkey, and the fur, the rare earrings, and the actual Genesis token IDs would be incorporated into the frontline art. And that minted out just last month. And we are getting a ton of inbound from different artists that want to kind of put works on Bitcoin. So it's a little bit about what we're doing.
I love it. And as someone who kind of came in through the art side of the NFT space, but who has been building a Bitcoin themed project on Ethereum for a very long time, just because that's what was available to us back in the day. It's really, really nice to, see the amount of infrastructure and effort being put into bringing art into the Bitcoin ecosystem. And I feel like right now we're just scratching the surface. I'm getting those kind of early 2018, 2019 Ethereum vibes surrounding the art and NFT ecosystem with Bitcoin. So definitely a fun time. We're very excited on the Satoshiverse side for all that's possible. We're working on some cool stuff as well that we will announce very soon, hopefully. And so, yeah, definitely looking forward to talking more about everything you guys are doing. Let's jump over to either Adam or Jake, or obviously both of you, but in whatever order you would like. Could you give us some insight into what you guys are building at Emblem Vault?
Sure, I'll go first. So my name is Jake. I'm the CEO at Emblem Vault. Emblem is a cross-chain digital asset tool that right now specializes in NFTs. Adam and I both joined the team in November 2022, but the project was actually founded back in 2016. So it's been, our founder, Shannon Code, has been building this project for a very long time. And actually he was an original builder on Bitcoin, as he was a developer at Mastercoin, which was the first protocol on Bitcoin back in 2013. So, when Emblem gained its traction, or you could say its product market fit, was in 2021, when the Bitcoin and Namecoin and Dogecoin NFT communities leveraged Emblem Vault's technology to trade those assets on Ethereum. This was the emerging sector of what's now known as historical NFTs. And during that time in 2021 and early 2022, Emblem Vault facilitated about 30,000 ETH in trading volume. Fast forward then to early 2023, and awesome protocol called Ordinals was born. And Ordinals followed the same suit as these early proof of work asset chains did, and Ordinals leveraged Emblem Vault to trade on Ethereum, mostly Bitcoin punks in that very kind of early Bitcoin Ordinals renaissance. And then the same traction then happened with Litecoin Ordinals, Bitcoin stamps, ETHscriptions, and now we're here today, kind of now building out a much larger vision of allowing users to trade any digital asset from any chain on any chain. Right now, mostly focused on UTXO-based NFTs, so things from like Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dogecoin, Bell's Coin, and all the meta protocols on top of it. And we're just trying to allow anybody to really take your assets to any blockchain, just as you would take like any item, like in the real world, to a different country. We kind of see it as the transport layer of the blockchain. I'll pass it over to Adam as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I would layer on that. We just hosted a space with, people who were involved in Doge Party, which is basically like Counterparty, but on Doge. Very old. It launched 10 years ago today. But what we see is that you see all these kind of disconnected communities and assets. And, how do we kind of come to one Web3 where all of these assets, no matter where they are, just move around seamlessly? That's what we're really building at Emblem Vault. So just to kind of put it in context, when we see ordinals or runes or what have you, whatever, meme coins on Solana popping up, how do these things move, right? Right now, everything's siloed, but we're very, very interested in how do these things move around, kind of seamlessly behind the scenes, where users just use them wherever they need them. That's what we're building.
I love it, and I think that's so important. I think when we were earlier in the space, it started to feel like there was a lot of different ideas being built on different blockchains, but it was still contained within maybe 10 or 15. Now we're probably talking about 200 to 300 protocols or more, right? And I think it's becoming impossible to envision a future where either a lot of those protocols go away and then we kind of consolidate back down to a few that are the most commonly used, or the other way where it's almost every company, every use case has its own blockchain, and then you absolutely need those bridges, and really need to, solve some of those issues, particularly outside the EVM ecosystem, right? Where bridging has become a little bit easier, I think, within EVM protocols. But as you start to venture outside of those protocols, there is so much, especially when you're looking at historical NFTs, there's so much that's been done, so much history that predates, what was done on Ethereum, and so the work you guys did originally, and now, it just makes a ton of sense to have those bridges, and, we really feel like that's the path forward, especially as we start to get, more into NFTs as a technology. I think we're gonna start to see a movement maybe away from art in the market share sense, in that NFTs have so much more utility in other, markets as well, that you're going to see those gain a tremendous amount of popularity. And as this all scales, you really do need these solutions to allow, cross-jurisdictional types of things, or cross-company, types of things. So go ahead. I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a few things to it. One is, you see Vitalik has actually been hammering a lot recently on this idea of interoperability, or L2 interoperability, right? Because as Ethereum's expanded, all the L2s have become really kind of, heterogeneous, and everything is really different, and it's not similar. So you need these bridges to really piece everything together. On the other side of this, you see Bitcoin is actually starting to go through something very similar here, where you have, 3 or 4 different type of asset issuance protocols, like ordinals, BRC20, counterparty, stamps, runes, etc. And now you're starting to see different types of meta protocols and L2s start to proliferate, and the ecosystems are becoming very fragmented. And, to this day, Emblem Vault is still really the only UTXO based bridge that allows you to take, Bitcoin NFTs to other chains. I've actually been quite surprised that since the company was founded 8 years ago, there still hasn't been a competitor that's popped up yet. It just kind of shows really to the difficulty of how hard it is. And it's actually funny that we have, Amanda on here with, On Chain Monkeys and MetaGood, because Emblem focuses on, taking an asset and moving it to another chain, where On Chain Monkeys actually migrated from Ethereum to Bitcoin, and they did it in their own unique way, of actually moving the assets over, and it was for their protocol. So it's just interesting that, as assets move to and from Bitcoin, there's a customized way. There's no one standard way, to go about doing this. And just one more thing to kind of tie this into gaming, and from the Emblem side here. A few years ago, maybe it was last year, we were talking with Yuga Labs, about helping them bring, 12-fold over to, the other side, right? Because 12-fold was an ordinal. This was like very early days, and other side is built on EVM, or that's what they were doing at the time. And there was no way to really pair them together. So to be able to take that art and put it into an ERC 7-21, and then take it into the metaverse, right? It really unlocks a lot of unique capabilities that really aren't just, value additive in terms of like, increasing the capital of it, but more is increasing, the functionality or the utility of these different type of assets. So yeah, it's really cool about the interoperability sector, because it really does merge in gaming. And I know that's what your focus is as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think gaming may be more than, other, parts of the blockchain space. It was years, I'd say, that I was begging for infrastructure like the infrastructure we have now for gaming, to increase the throughput, to, create user onboarding that's easier. And we've seen so much happen because of the emergence of the gaming space in making certain things like that possible, right? With some of these, semi-custodial wallets, some of the solutions now with like the layer 3s that are being built for insanely high throughput. But at the end of the day, that is causing more fragmentation, and that is causing, I guess, the idea of a blockchain to really, operate along that kind of spectrum of decentralization. And so I do think that even then you start to think about, okay, like there are different use cases of NFTs even within a single ecosystem. So you could be a user who wants to own and collect an NFT and then move it to a different ecosystem because maybe 99% of the items in your game are just game items that you enjoy playing with or that are part of kind of your massive inventory of items. But you have that one really rare item that you want to take outside of that layer 3 or whatever it is into another ecosystem in order to tap into liquidity or marketplaces that don't exist for those, those games, particularly, especially as you talk about, layer 3s where the game is building the entire blockchain, right? So if you don't have these sorts of protocols that can essentially, I'm going to use the wrong term, but wrap these as another NFT, and then be able to sell them or whatever it might be, you don't have access to a lot of the infrastructure that's already been built for the marketability of those assets. So yeah, it's definitely something that we think about, kind of constantly, and it's something that I guess I'm a believer in different blockchains potentially having different purposes. And, I've always been a big fan of Bitcoin, but, I've never was kind of one of the core believers in everything needs to be on Bitcoin layer 1. I think that, having bridges allows for other blockchains to do what the protocols are really good at. And, I think that there's going to be a bit of both as we move forward, but I think we'll see more specialization. Go ahead, Adam, and then we'll get started with the kind of the agenda.
Yeah, it's really interesting, just the idea of, what happens when it's as easy to spin up an L2 as, flipping a switch, and we all have L2s, and what happens then is really interesting thought exercise. And to your point of gaming assets, and I think there'll be different ways. I mean, right now, basically you have two ways. You have, wormhole, I guess would be one way, which is there of the kind of burn and mint, strategy, which I think for low value, I think definitely has a place, right? If you want, whatever, Starbucks gift reward card, you maybe want that to live on every single chain and basically be free to move around. But anytime you start moving up into any sort of value or dollar value to an asset, it just is our feeling that you're going to want to maintain, token provenance. And that's where we specialize. So just to give some context, I think there's definitely space for both. And both will probably be the way forward, kind of going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I couldn't agree more there. I think that's, the provenance element is the reason this gets very complicated, but especially if you're looking at historical NFTs, you don't want to be burning the original, NFT just to represent it on, a different platform. So totally with you there. And I think that we're going to see different instances where they coexist. Okay. So a few housekeeping things before we jump in. First, I just pinned the Hideout tweet to the top of the space. That is our way of getting people in here. So definitely go ahead and give that a retweet if you haven't already. That's also what we use to drive our giveaway at the end of the spaces. So when we get to the end of the spaces, we're going to be doing a giveaway of Satoshi's crystals, which are our key resource within the Satoshiverse. And, cool thing to win, cool thing to have if you haven't been involved in the ecosystem, but we limit it to those who have both retweeted that post and who are physically present in the spaces. So definitely good odds if you can go and do that. But otherwise, it's just great conversation that we want people to see. So just a little extra incentive. The other part of the housekeeping item, which I always forget to mention, but we really do want to see, is please feel free to use that pinned space to showcase the things you've got going on. So usually, sometimes we have gaming projects on here, and they've got like really cool trailers or things like that. But if you do have an art collection that you just launched or something visual or informative, feel free to pin to the top of the spaces. We're all about sharing, everything that's going on in the space. So if you have something visual or informative in tweet form, feel free to pin it to the top of the spaces. Okay, so now let's jump over to our special guest host today, Lau, who is on the Hideout account, who will give us a quick introduction to herself, and then will take us into the questions. Hey, Lau.
Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Well, my name is Laura, and I am the Partnerships and Community Manager for Satoshiverse and for the Hideout. I'm very excited to be co-hosting here. So I'll start with the questions. We have both individual and everyone questions, and I would like to start us with an everyone question. I would like for Jake to start us off, and then everyone can just like jump in with their opinion and their comments. So our question is, how do you see NFTs and Web3 technologies impacting traditional industries like art, music, and gaming in the next decade?
It's funny, actually, one of my pinned posts, the pinned post on my profile discusses this idea that I tend to share a lot is that blockchains are countries, and I tend to view NFTs as just, typical items that you see around the physical world that's being replicated in this, on-chain ownership world. So NFTs, as I've studied them through the historical NFT space, you see a lot of the early iterations for things like membership, art, gaming, real world assets, etc. And I think we've gone through actually the majority of the experimentation so far. Now it's actually just building out these individual sectors so far. I'm under the, pretty firm belief that NFTs will, be the primary form of tokenization moving forward. You're going to have, maybe 5 to 10, main purpose cryptocurrencies, right? Like Ethereum, Bitcoin, Solana. But you have all these ecosystems that are being built on top of now, right? Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and then all of these, Gen 3 blockchains that are going to continue to pop up. And these NFTs represent, all of these unique items that are going to exist inside of these applications and so on and so forth. And as we move kind of into the future, we'll say 10 years from now, you have millennials, Gen Z, and Gen Alpha, who are the ones that are, going to make up the majority of the population, and they're going to spend the majority of their time, which they already do today, online. And how it revolutionizes, the traditional art world and gaming world and, the physical redemption world, et cetera, is that just all that activity really moves digitally through this layer. And it may have an impact in terms of the value or the use, or I'd say impact the value of what it is in the real world. But all of these industries, especially art, is being completely transformed because now you have a programmability layer on top of art, right? Like with NFTs that you can't really do and hasn't really been done in the traditional world. So, kind of just to wrap this up is that the programmability aspect of NFTs and the fact that the majority of the younger generation spend the majority of their time online, just further, just further, I guess, solidifies that this is the future of how asset and industry is going to be formed.
Amanda, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. I mean, another hat I do have is also as an investor, and I do quite a bit of investing in the crypto space. So, I mean, I think Web3 is obviously turning the ownership model on its head for many industries, art, music, insurance, in that, it's able to kind of, as we move towards decentralization and people owning their own assets on chain, it can, potentially remove the layer of kind of middlemen, right, who have in the past kind of decided and anointed like what is the best art, what is the best music, and taking fees from that. And so I mean, I think one is obviously in Web 2, you are the product, your eyeballs and advertising are the product. In Web 3 and with like NFTs and even art communities, kind of the ownership resides with the community. And as the value kind of increases for that community, it is shared, amongst all the token holders. And so I think it's just a very different ownership model. Specifically on Bitcoin, we're so excited that the Ordinals protocol launched, over 18 months ago now, and is enabling real world assets. So data, art, music, World Wide Web source code, all of this to be inscribed directly on the L1. As most people know, many NFTs that are on Ethereum are pointers to offline file systems. So you could be trading a digital certificate of ownership, but the actual assets, you don't actually own on chain. And that's what's, I think, so beautiful and exciting about Ordinals as a new medium is the art is actually on chain, and it's something that, you will, basically outlive us all. We like to kind of use the analogy of the Lascaux cave paintings in France. Like, obviously none of those cave people are around anymore, but the art outlives us. And, as we think about On-Chain Monkey and so many of the incredible art that's coming to Bitcoin, all of that will probably outlast us. I did have one other comment back to kind of what you were saying earlier about kind of moving assets to different chains and teleburning. I mean, one thing to note about On-Chain Monkey is, we were the first, 10,000 Ethereum collection to do a teleburn process, but it wasn't just moving, the On-Chain Monkey asset from Ethereum to Bitcoin. We actually did 4 inscriptions. And so it truly wasn't just a teleburn. It was an upgrade of your assets. So anyone who bought the On-Chain Monkey on Ethereum would get, your Genesis Monkey. It would also get kind of a really interesting kind of modern art rendition of it. It kind of different moving shapes and colors. It would also get a digital certificate of ownership. In fact, we have a space on Thursday. We'll be kind of talking about digital certificates of ownership and how that plays, in the Ordinals ecosystem. And so it, for everyone that moved, they basically had, some of the earliest inscriptions, and 4 of them for every monkey. And so that's why, kind of over time, there's been, I think we've done 8 portals now and a lot of education to move people over to Bitcoin, but over 8,000 of our 10,000 monkeys have all ported over to Bitcoin from Ethereum, which is a historic first for any collection to do that from Ethereum to Bitcoin.
It's really interesting, just talking, being founded in, or the foundational layer for Jake and I is both in this kind of historic NFT space. And you just see that all these ideas have been talked about, literally for over a decade. And we finally see like first real use cases. And obviously the one that really hit was artists, and art, on chain and connected to blockchains. That definitely wasn't what people were thinking was going to happen a decade ago. People were thinking like stocks or, ownership of assets, real world assets, all these sort of things, which kind of only are now coming to fruition. And it's like so much of, the kind of tech behind it needs to be built out. And I just feel like we're still really, really early in this process of what's going to work. I mean, we were just talking about this thing that happened back in like 2016, which was Let's Talk Bitcoin, which was basically where people could put blog posts and podcasts and stuff and get rewarded with tokens. And up until today, it's still like really the best like social network that was foundational of blockchain technology. Like it's still the best one, and we've had kind of these other trials of, I don't know, Friend Tech and all these other ones, which have kind of just come and gone in a few weeks. It just feels like there just has to be a whole lot more building to happen to make these things a reality, and just a whole lot more trial and error. And, I think with what happened with Ordinals, as Amanda was saying, all this new building that's come back to Bitcoin is really bullish for me, because it allows all this new experimentation to take place. And that's the only way we get to this kind of Web3 future that we're all kind of believing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess to kind of tie a few of those points together and kind of give my thoughts, I came in, when I came in 2017, I was working as a lawyer in the entertainment and intellectual property, space. And, I got very interested in NFTs as this tangibility layer for digital assets. Not so much because I necessarily believed in NFTs as, the idea that it became, right, with all the hype and all the things that were there, but more so as a technological layer for this tangibilization of digital assets, and really on a thesis that digital was just going to continue to grow and grow and change and grow. And I can't see anything in the last, 7 years since I've joined the space that would indicate that it's not going to continue to grow as a medium. I mean, we definitely saw a lot of hype about the metaverse for a period during COVID, and that died down a little bit, but we've seen, revolutions in AI, in hardware related to VR and AR. I'm not sure of much in this world, but I am pretty sure that, the world is going more and more digital in the next 5 to 10 years, and NFTs and blockchain in general operate as that tangibilization layer for items, and that's going to unlock things. It's going to unlock a lot of the boring stuff, right? The property rights, the sub-licensing, the infrastructures, the legal infrastructures that we think about for physical assets that we take for granted, that don't exist in the digital space, will have the opportunity to flourish because of this technology. And so, as someone who did get involved in the art space very early on Ethereum, it was interesting, right? Because I think it was always this somewhat unspoken but understood opinion amongst artists, and I think that especially artists who spent a lot of time in the space, that there were issues with the technology, and the fact that a lot of the art isn't on chain, and that they are pointers, and that we're already seeing certain platforms shutting down and their IPFS servers not necessarily being supported, and so there's some issues there, right? But then I think you look at art on Bitcoin in its current form, and that certainly I don't think speaks to necessarily the main value prop that I believe NFTs bring to the table for digital artists, in that I think, at least as it currently stands, artists need to change their art form largely in order to mint on Bitcoin layer 1 as ordinals, because of the file size and format limitations. So it's a challenge, and I think it's a challenge that projects and artists have navigated incredibly well and done some incredible stuff. But I think that when I'm looking at NFTs as a means of enabling natively digital artists and kind of the future of digital art in the blockchain space, neither solution really fits perfectly, right? And I think that we do need to see that infrastructure developed. We do need to see the ability to mint much more cheaply and much bigger files, and to store them in a more permanent way, on the blockchain. I do believe in that value prop, but also we're going to see, like we're seeing in gaming probably doesn't need to be on Bitcoin layer 1. There's going to be use cases where you can be, for example, inheriting the security layer of Bitcoin, and then, through some sort of roll up, but doing it on a Bitcoin layer 2, or on a EVM compatible Bitcoin layer 2, which you're starting to see pop up. There's a lot of solutions out there that are going to cause this space to grow. But then you look at, the work that's being done on L1 with ordinals and with these protocols, which really, they're experiments. And we look at the amount of infrastructure that's expanding on that experimentation. And it is truly incredible to see, because what it means is that in 2 to 5 years, likely, we're going to see the solutions that stick, right? Just like we did in the Ethereum ecosystem, just like we have in the Bitcoin system before that. You're going to see things change, and it's going to move towards more sustainable solutions that hit more of these issues, but the history will be there. And I think that's the important part, whether it's on Bitcoin or on Ethereum, is that you do have these records of the NFTs, of the assets, of the future. And I do think there's going to be a place for enhancing these collections to ensure that they do stay permanently, inscribed in history, maybe with, varied provenance and, something that will come to be accepted socially by the space in the future as being okay, right? Because there were definitely maxis even in 2017, 2018 in Ethereum that said, if it wasn't on chain, it wasn't really blockchain art. And I think the space generally accepted a different, path for that. But I think that came with its challenges. And I think that, we're going to continue to see that, but it's definitely encouraging to see the excitement, specifically within the Bitcoin ecosystem, around art and these solutions, because it means that we will get to the place where it needs to be. I think what Adam was saying, I don't think we're there yet. I think we have a lot more work to do and a lot more infrastructure to build, but it genuinely feels for the first time in a little while like things are heading in the right direction, and there's a lot of excitement, on that front in the Bitcoin space.
Awesome. How about we move to some individual questions now? So the first individual question that I have is for Amanda. So what excites you the most about crypto art and NFTs on Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think, one, it's just so early. I think Adam mentioned that. On-chain Monkey has done quite a bit of innovation, in terms of both introducing the concepts of parent-child provenance, which are now kind of standards for how you define ordinals collection, as well as the use of recursion. All of that was, our on-chain Monkey Dimensions collection last June. My co-founder Danny Yang inscribed code libraries that other artists are now using to put their art on Bitcoin. So, Far from Quantum Cats, Billy Resty, there's a number of Hardo from Floriforms. So it's kind of like this open source code for anyone to use to put art on Bitcoin. And so what's so exciting is this has just all happened really in the last year and a half. And so I think what I'm most excited about is just the interest and the innovation of the art community to explore Bitcoin as a medium. And even when we were talking to Alexei, he's like, I don't want it to be, obviously he's done very well with Ethereum and I think Tezos as well. It's not either or chains, it's, and chains, and you can be a artist and do charcoals and do paintings and do sculptures and all of them have their own value. So I think, for some collectors, obviously it's still, they still want to be on Ethereum. People want to collect on different chains, but, the beauty is that at least it's even possible to now be on, the mother chain, which is the most secure, largest market cap L1, which is Bitcoin. And it's still very early. Like the protocol is still being developed. There's going to be, as I think Jake said, it's programmable. So there's going to be more that's going to be available for artists to do. So I think that's, what's truly exciting is that there's many artists that are just starting to explore Bitcoin for the first time. And there's more innovation to happen even on the protocol. And so I feel like we're very, very early days for what's possible with ordinals.
Thank you so much for that answer. Okay, so the next question that we have is for Emblem Vault, so Jake and Adam. Your question is, why do you think cross-chain support and interoperability for NFTs is important?
Adam, you want to go first on this one?
Sure. I think, it's one of these things that, we've obviously seen it already be important where rare Pepes and these older kind of historical NFTs were able to move where liquidity is. And I think liquidity is always going to have a place in crypto. But the reality is that we're building infrastructure because with the intention that we don't know what the next thing is going to be. Yes, you can move your Pepes over to Blast to, farm rewards and stuff like that. But we don't know what somebody's going to build next. That's going to be the thing. And I think that's what's exciting. Like nobody could have predicted, when we interviewed, Casey, 6 months before Ordinals launched, nobody in the world knew that Ordinals was going to be, the thing that brought building back to Bitcoin. Like nobody on earth could have predicted that. Right. And so just being aware that that's the way, the internet and that's the way crypto works, I think is the exciting thing for us. And, that building of creative people, whether it's creative developers or artists or whoever, is just something that I know we at Emblem just love supporting.
I'll tack on a little bit. I'll use a very relevant example. With the rise of meme coins that have been created on Solana, and then you have artists who are minting on Bitcoin and Ethereum. We've had a pretty popular meme coin creator approach us and ask us really how to solve this, right? He's like, look, I've minted Bitcoin NFTs on ordinals and Counterparty. I have a PFP collection on Ethereum, but I need my users and my token that's worth, $500 million is on Solana. So how do we technically kind of put this all together? And, Emblem has a path to building this. This is why we launched our marketplace recently to help kind of, smooth these out and create these kind of boutique storefronts. But this just kind of points out the same thing that Satoshiverse was mentioning in the very beginning, and Emblem believes this as well, is that every blockchain really has its strength, and it's not always apparent in the beginning. I think now, maybe halfway through the cycle, you see that Solana now is really kind of the new spot to cultivate culture. And it's really tough to, or once that culture has been cultivated, on Solana, and it kind of begins to grow outside of, the liquidity constraints of that chain, it needs to then go, mature and then go interact with all these other liquidity environments. And so, that's from the fungible token space. And then from NFTs, it's also somewhat similar. And I was kind of ranting about this, yesterday on Twitter. You see these L2s struggle with creating native assets. You see, right, like Arbitrum and Stacks and all these L2s, minting NFTs directly or fungible tokens on these L2s. They don't really get traction, but what really does get traction is minting these assets on the L1, Ethereum L1, Solana, and Bitcoin, and then taking them and moving them to these programmable layers, right? Whether you want to, move your Bitcoin asset to Merlin for gaming, or you want to move it to Stacks for kind of this more institutional kind of infrastructure, right? Or you want to move it to Blast to farm for points. You're starting to now see where all of this specialization exists, and people need to take those assets and then move them over there. It's exactly kind of how the real world works, right? The US exports a handful of things, China exports a handful of things, and each country imports a lot of things. And you're seeing this with Ethereum is becoming more of the importation chain than the export chain. And Bitcoin has historically been kind of the export chain, where you take Bitcoin, the native asset, and now Bitcoin, the NFTs of all types, and moving them to these other chains where Ethereum is importing all of these different liquidity measures of fungible tokens from all these other chains to go interact with all of the DeFi protocols. And so with Emblem, this is why we find it important for cross-chain programmability, because as Satoshiverse said, gaming's very unlikely to exist on Bitcoin L1. And then you have all these other chains that are going to start filling in all these other, major use cases. We don't know what they are, but if you can build the rails, then eventually you can either identify the problems by either having the communities approach you, or you just interacting with communities like we're doing today. And then you could provide the solutions and really kind of jump on the opportunity. So really couldn't be more excited. But, as I've also been in this space for 8 years now, it really is becoming a little bit more clear what all of these different blockchains, primary focus and primary use cases.
Well, I'm glad it's becoming more clear for you, because every time I look at this space, I'm like, what the hell is going on? There's 45 new blockchains. 28 of them are focused on gaming. There's this new protocol that's going to do this new thing that, I didn't even know was
Let's
possible.
be clear. Some have not found their product market fit yet, right? Some have not. Right. But I think for the big ones, we're seeing it, right? And it is funny. You're right. Like for many have not. But we're starting to see it, right? We're starting to see where the big ones are finding their kind of big niche.
Yeah, and I think to the point Jake might have been making there, or I understood it as, is that you do have these protocols that maybe technically aren't necessarily better at doing one thing or another, but have kind of made that their niche. And just like any other, industry in the real world, you typically go where the consumers are and where your communities are. And if you have a target market, you go to that target market. You don't always expect them, to come to you. And so, if we are talking about DeFi, it may be certain protocols. If we're talking, like you said, about NFT marketplaces and where you can actually list these things and buy and sell them, they might be different protocols. If we're talking about extremely high throughput and transaction volume that may not require a large degree of decentralization, for things like gaming, we're probably talking about different protocols. If you're talking about, something that's going to stand the test of time, you might be looking at Bitcoin L1. And I think that the reality in my mind, I genuinely believe that 5 years from now, we will be looking at a very different landscape than we are today. And, it's hard to imagine Bitcoin not being there. It's hard to imagine Ethereum not being there. I like Solana, but I'm still on the fence 5 years from now, so we'll see. I do think that they've done an incredible job of beating the narrative away that originally plagued the protocol, and has become a real, like Jake was saying, cultural leader and a place for cultivating culture. Um, Frankly, I'm not sure we're going to see meme coins in 5 years. That's going out on a limb and saying that they're either going to evolve or die. And I think we're already seeing that now. But that's just my personal opinion on meme coins. I do think we're going to see NFTs in ways we never imagined. I know where there's going to be infrastructure. There's some really interesting infrastructure that's been built over the last 2 years for NFTs that will make any kind of bull run in the next cycle look very different than the last cycle. The last cycle was all about how can I get on this platform? How can I sell my art? Who do I have to convince that I'm a good artist so that they'll support me? Now it's, more about empowering people to kind of be their own, best marketers and their own brand, and the tech stacks are there, and it's just much more symbiotic, I think, how we're moving forward as an NFT space. But yeah, it's exciting times. It's exciting to see how all this is going to progress forward. And we gave a really broad question before about how things change over the next 10 years. And I don't think any of us really know. I think that we all know, we're all excited about the space. We're all excited to see it grow. And like Jake was saying, sometimes you just have to build the rails and not knowing, what train's going to get on them. Because it's a space where literally ordinals could pop up. And then the next day, a new protocol could pop up. And I guess that's a question I have, because I'm not, I've become quite familiar with the Bitcoin, like a little bit of the history of Bitcoin and some of the stuff that was done before, with NFTs essentially on Bitcoin. But I will say, as someone who has spent a lot of time on the Ethereum side, building on ordinals is an extreme challenge. It's, it goes far beyond the challenges related to doing anything of substance on Ethereum, which, has obviously had the benefit of time. I'm curious to the panel, and this is kind of going off script, but feel free to jump in if you have an opinion. Do we think that the future of Bitcoin NFTs, at least for digital art, is going to be on ordinals, or do we think a new protocol or a new standard is going to pop up that maybe is a little bit more flexible? I think we can all assume that ordinals needs to evolve if it's going to be ordinals. But I guess the question is, does ordinals get built out more as a protocol, or is there a new protocol or standard, I may be using the wrong term, that comes up that's just more flexible and kind of, supersedes ordinals as the place where artists are minting and doing so on layer one? Because I know there's been upgrades discussed that will open doors for bigger block sizes and things like that. So I'm not the expert here. I know we have a panel.
I was just going to say, I mean, I think it's really hard to know. I think none of us predicted even ordinals back before it came to market. So I don't think it's hard to know what will be, or if there will be other protocols that will be launched that are better for art. But I do agree with the general sentiment, I think, of the panelists that there are different chains kind of for different use cases, be that for art or for L2s. And I think, we've, and so it just depends on what your use case is. And I think for really, truly the highest value digital artifacts, they will be on Bitcoin, but the opportunity potentially even to inscribe them to, the Bitcoin L1 may be limited, right? Over time, it might just get too expensive. Like there won't be like numerous 10,000 collections at some point. It'll just be too expensive to inscribe those onto Bitcoin. So I do think, for truly high value digital assets, that they will, continue to reside on Bitcoin, but it's hard to say kind of like what could come in the future for, potentially not as high value assets or things that are kind of more high volume traded assets, potentially like gaming, et cetera.
Yeah, I'd love to. If I guess I was just thinking more on the very high value side, but maybe something that isn't under 4 megabytes, right? Something that is more of the higher fidelity digital art that we were seeing. Because I think the majority of the digital artists that at least existed before, this space blew up were creating. Styles of art that may not be conducive for ordinal. So I guess the question is, do we eventually see L1 evolve to a point where it can support that type of art, or do we think that those are going to live, potentially off chain or on a different chain, or not off chain, but on a different chain or on a layer two, or do we just not know yet? I mean, do we not know if we're going to be able to open up the Bitcoin art space kind of to all these different art forms that, that go beyond, I guess, the file size limitations of a Bitcoin block?
It is really tough to know. I would say, if you're focusing on ordinals specifically, it seems like the innovation is going to happen on the application layer, right? Which is either L2s, dApps, the kind of meta protocols, etc. Casey, the founder, has said that ordinals is close to being in its final product. And he's had the same for runes. And when you look across the space for some of the other kind of meta protocols, or you just call them asset issuance protocols, things like Counterparty, they're looking into adding additional programmability, and you have a few other protocols that are as well, but it's still not really fully on layer one, or they're adding kind of EVM capabilities into it as well, right? Because Bitcoin lacks smart contracts. So you're getting more of, just kind of these hard, pristine assets and importing them into different areas across different chains, or even kind of intrachain. I mean, there's a protocol right now. There's actually kind of a little bit of a application war going on Bitcoin for this fight for programmability. There's like 4 or 5 different protocols right now. Where you should be able to kind of import your assets from ordinals into tap, or you even have the larger mission of the Taproot wizards, who are trying to get a soft fork for this operation code added called OPCat, which used to exist in the code base over 10 years ago. And so then that adds additional kind of programmability natively on the L1, but even in that case, I still have to build something called CatVM, which is an application using that opcode. Whereas on the other side, right, with Ethereum, you have, these standards like ERC 721, ERC 1155, where once that's adopted kind of by the foundation and by the community, that's generally what's used in perpetuity. And that's because you have smart contracts, and it's just then easier to make everything kind of interact with each other. Whereas on Bitcoin, everything is much different because it lacks standards there. So I'm just more under the opinion that the innovation is going to happen on the application layer, whereas Ethereum, the innovation generally happens on the technology layer.
Amazing. Well, I really appreciate the insight, coming from different perspectives, but clearly we have some really experts on this panel. So really, really appreciate the insight. We were able to get into some stuff that we usually don't get into on this spaces. But it was super, super interesting, especially given personally, our interest in doing things on Bitcoin and ordinals, and we've been working on quite a bit behind the scenes. So the more we can talk to people like you guys who've been doing this since the start, the better it is for us to really understand the possibilities and do something unique that continues to push the envelope. We're excited about some of the possibilities. I think our challenge has been, well, as an art form, how to make really high quality stuff as small as possible, has been kind of the ordinals challenge for us, and there's some really interesting stuff you could do, we've discovered, and so we're excited. And we'll have some news there in probably in the coming months, as we move forward. But wow, guys, thank you so much for taking the time today. The hour flew by, and I really appreciate your insights. For those who, so we still have a contest winner to announce. Lau, why don't you do the honors on the contest winner? Lau, did you? You might be muted if you didn't hear me. All right, no, it's okay. I'm not sure. That might have been on me. So I'll announce the contest winner of the 5 Satoshi's crystals for retweeting the post and being here live. It is our very own Old White Dragon. So congratulations to Old White Dragon on the crystals. That is someone who I know will put them to good use because he's in the game quite often and been training up his Legionnaires. So congrats to OWD down in the audience. You know how to find us, I know at this point. So please reach out and we'll get you your crystals. Again, back to the panelists. Thank you guys so much for taking the time. It was really, really insightful conversation. I learned a ton, and I'm sure the guests did. For those of you who this is your first Hideout, I see a lot of on-chain monkeys in here. Thank you guys for coming out, and everyone else as well. See a lot of great PFP representation down there. We do this every week on Tuesdays. Give the account a follow if you're interested in this sort of content. There's no monetary angle. There's no sponsorships. We're just doing this because we love the space and we want to talk to the people helping build it. So I really appreciate all of you guys being on. So what I'll do now is if you want to take a couple minutes, I don't know if you have anything coming up that you want to promote or just letting people know how to find you for the things that you are doing in the future. Please do. Everyone in the crowd, please do give everyone a follow. Let them know that what they're doing is appreciated. And I'll silence the mic, and then once you guys are done, I'll close the spaces about 30 seconds later, just because there's a bit of a delay. So if we pause, that's why.
I'll just go pretty quick. Just follow the Emblem account. I'd appreciate that for everyone. It's in the crowd there. We just launched a marketplace that's in beta called Emblem.markets. We're working to build a chain agnostic cross-chain marketplace, which just means this idea that you're abstracting away the chain from which the asset exists on, and you can purchase in any cryptocurrencies. So we're working on that pretty hard, and we have a lot of things that are upcoming towards the end of the year in terms of gamification, tokenomics, and incentivization programs. So just stay tuned to that. You can follow me or Adam or the Emblem account to see what's coming later this year.
Looks like Amanda dropped off. Also, just guys, Jake and I run a show, and Chris, who's also in the audience, run a show, Tuesday through Thursday, 11:30 a.m. Eastern, where we explore all sorts of things, everything from Solana to Bitcoin, a lot of Bitcoin focused content. So, yeah, just follow the Emblem account and you'll see us.
All right, I love it. Thanks so much, and thank you to everyone who joined. We'll be wrapping up now in 30 seconds.